Hey, hey, and welcome back to the Fully Booked Photographer podcast. And this week, it was four, now it's two, Janine.
I know it's just me and you, Ronan.
So it's a big week though, right? Brad getting married to Ruth. We text Jonathan last night because there was no photography or photographs
Ooh.
allowed at the wedding, as you know. So we messaged Jonathan last night and said, are you free to have a chat? So we messaged Jonathan anyway, and he does a video call to us, a WhatsApp call. And who has he got with him but the bride and groom? So we had 3 minutes, the bride and groom, and had a quick chat and congratulated them. But Ruth looked absolutely amazing. And Brad looked very, very smart, which is a difficult thing for Brad, but we won't go there. I think it was the first time ever I've seen Brad in a shirt and tie. So, yeah. So I'm sure all will be revealed to the world in the near future when the photographs and video and all are released. So,
Yes, I
yeah,
know. I can't wait to see.
yeah. So, Janine, seeing as it's just you and I, we had a conversation. We said, you know what, this would be a great chance to deep dive in detail, right, into your journey in the business of photography. So thank you for agreeing to share your total story. So tell us anyway, when you first fell in love with photography and a camera, like what was that journey for you? Because you didn't start out in photography, right?
I did not start out as a photographer. No. The first time I really picked up a camera was in high school. I don't. Do you guys do yearbooks over in Ireland for
Not
schools?
really, not
Okay,
as big as you
so
guys do.
yeah, it's yearbooks, as people over here know, is a huge deal. And I was on the yearbook staff in high school, and I did a lot of the photography for the yearbook, and I just had fun with it. And I was a big scrapbooker as a kid, and as in high school and college, and I was always the one walking around with the disposable cameras, taking pictures at all the football games and all the parties and all the things that we went to, any trips or vacations. I just love documenting life and always found it to be important and fun, and how I looked back to remember the things that I had done with my friends and family. But I am an engineer by trade. And so I graduated from the University of Florida. Go Gators, for anyone listening, with my degree in mechanical engineering, and went to work for Motorola. And I was a full blown engineer, Ronan. I mean, that was me. I did mechanical engineering design, and I did plastic design. So I went to go work for Motorola to design cell phone batteries. And that was back in the day when the batteries came out of the cell phones, right? And the rechargeables. And so that was the division I worked for, and did plastic design and things like that. And I loved it. And the pretty quick within my working for Motorola, I started getting sent overseas. And I had a couple of trips were kind of whatever. And I was just fine with, whatever camera I took. But then I got sent on a big 3-week trip to China. And I knew during that trip we were going to have time to go to the Great Wall of China, the Forbidden Palace, the Forbidden City, the Summer Palace, Pearl Street, like all these, iconic places in China that you hear of. And I didn't know if I'd ever get to go back again. And, and back then, and it might even still be this way now, I don't know. It was such a big deal. Like if you went over, especially as a female with Motorola, you went over with an escort. Like it was a big deal. Like the engineer, it was a big deal to prepare for the trip. So I knew if it was that big of a deal, I wanted to have real photographs, not just ones taken on a disposable camera. So I went in Atlanta. That's when we still had camera shops. And Atlanta had a large camera store. So I went and bought my first camera. And I'm actually still friends with that camera sales guy, Ronan. It's so funny. I told this story recently to somebody, and he stayed in the industry too as a vendor, went to work for Canon. So like at the trade shows and things, I still run into him and whatnot. But so I bought my first camera, and then I was like, well, wait a minute. I don't know how to use it. This isn't like just a disposable camera. So I started taking classes at Showcase, which was the name of the camera shop. So I started taking classes on how to use the camera, realized as an engineer that the camera is very technical. And so it made me love it even more. And it was a very technical art in a way. So I love people, which is probably obvious by now. I love people. And so the camera quickly became a way for me to communicate with people in a different way. And so I learned more and more about the technical aspects of it, and started taking classes on lighting and the camera and like everything I could imagine to absorb. And this was great because as much as I loved working at Motorola as an engineer, it didn't fulfill me in other ways. So on the weekends and at night, I just started taking more and more classes so that I could learn more and more about photography. And my cube mate at the time, because yes, at Motorola, we worked in cubicles. She also fell in love with photography too. And we started taking more and more classes together. And then it was fateful. One class, we ended up taking a class together at the Atlanta Art Institute. And the instructor was a wedding photographer. And he liked both of our personalities and asked if we wanted to assist him on the weekends photographing weddings. And that's how it all started. And so we left Motorola together within like 4 months and started a photography studio in Atlanta together. And so, but, as you can imagine, being an engineer, making really good money at Motorola. In fact, they called it the golden handcuffs, right? Corporate America. You make so much money that it's hard to leave. And that's why they pay you so well, because they don't want you to leave. So, unlike going into photography just from a passion for photography, we both went into it right away with, we have to make money. Like, I can't leave this job at Motorola to make no money just because I love photography. That was never in the cards for me. It was never just going to be a hobby that I just did because I loved it. I wanted to run a business. And I came from a family of entrepreneurs. My dad and my brother both ran businesses. And so I always knew, I think at some point in my life, I always knew I'd run my own business of some sort. I wasn't destined to work for Motorola forever, which is good because they don't really exist anymore. But I always thought it would be some sort of engineering or design firm, so it just kind of took a different shape.
So before we go further with that, right, and we'll deep dive into that first venture into your business, right? And just talking about Motorola, like, why do you think they didn't continue? What was the reason why? What did you learn from that for your own business?
Well, hello there, James. I have a visitor today on the podcast.
Hello, James. How are you? We're recording the podcast. How are you? Say hello to everybody.
Podcast. We're live.
Say hello.
Say hi.
Hi.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go outside and wait.
Okay. Don't talk to strangers. Okay.
There we go. So one of the advantages of running your own business, Jeanine, is being able to manage, your home life and all that too, and your amazing children and stuff like that.
It's the first week of summer, so summer camp hasn't started yet. So James is here.
So talk to us, Jeanine, about what happened Motorola from your perspective, what did you learn from that for your own business?
So from my perspective as an engineer at Motorola, they did not transfer well with the times. Here's a company that started off with, a gentleman started the company and then it passed along to his children and it passed along and they believed in themselves more than they believed in where technology was going. We're Motorola, we're the kings, we're the giants. We're like, fifth most recognized brand in the world. No one can ever take us down. And they didn't, and they rested on their laurels and they did not move when things moved to digital. And I was working for the company at the time when technology was going from analog phones to digital phones, and they did not make the switch fast enough.
Like a lot of photographers.
That did not want to make the switch. And they started falling behind in the market. And and it's funny because you'll laugh at this story, Ronan. So one of my projects as an engineer was a project that was called Alien. And it was a camera that, like, on the phones back then, right? They were flip phones. And it was a camera that slipped onto the bottom of the phone and plugged into it. And we had gotten it all the way through concept, through prototyping, and the marketing department canceled the program and said no one would ever want to have a camera on their phone.
Wow.
So that should sum it up right away on why Motorola did not continue well as a company. They just couldn't predict where technology was going. And they were so wrapped up in where they were and that they were at the top of the pile, like they were king of the hill where they were, but they couldn't see going forward and they didn't keep up. They didn't move with where technology was going. And that's really what took them down.
I'm sure Steve Jobs in Silicon Valley was going, happy days.
Happy days. Anyway. It wasn't just Motorola. Kodak had the same thing happen, and they just didn't foresee. And we talk about this a lot in Fully Booked Photographer. You can't rest on what you've accomplished. You have to keep pushing forward and looking for what's next. Otherwise, you end up going backwards.
Absolutely. So is that what you learned for your business then? That, you can never sort of be happy is the wrong word, but you can never stop looking at what's coming down the line in terms of opportunities and threats and matching that with the strengths and weaknesses in the business. That not only to survive do you need to do that, but to get your business to the next level, if you want to do that, that you have to be open-minded and never sort of say, well, I've made it now, that's it.
Yes, no, you're right. And it's interesting, it's a fine balance. So as a techie, I have to balance I don't buy a new camera every time they come out because it's a waste of money, right? There's no value in having the newest and latest camera technology if what I have is working, right? So that to me, whereas I could go that route, I have to have the newest and latest camera, is the tool I'm using working, right? Is it doing what I need to do to make the pictures that I need to make and the product I need to make for my clients, right? So there's that. I only change cameras and lights when I absolutely have to. I mean, my light stands, Ronan, some of them have zip ties holding them together because to me, that's not critical in what I need to produce a product for my client. What is critical is the journey I take them on and the technology software wise, marketing wise, and things like that I need to do and the ideas. Right? What are clients wanting? For me, my client is a working mom with young children. And so what is that about? That working mom is on Pinterest a lot. She's looking for ideas. And so what is she seeing on Pinterest that she's going to want of her children? So so there's that. There is what's trending on TikTok and YouTube and what is it that they're watching? What is it that they're seeing? I get inspiration from catalogs that they look through and things like that. Like what are the colors they're seeing? What are they decorating their homes with? Like what style is in? Is it boho chic? Is it French country? Is it clean and modern? Because if everyone in my area is designing clean and modern and I'm doing brown classic portraits, they're not going to gel, right? So for me, it's not the tech side of the camera that I'm always staying on top of. It's what my clients are seeing in their lives and what they're choosing to put in their home. And what fun experiences are out there for children. And I'm staying on top of that. And then finding the technology software wise to help me achieve those things, and we've been talking a lot about AI on the podcast recently and in the Fully Booked Photographer. And it excites me because it is at my tech geek alley. And I think you knew this, right? I wanted to work for Disney. I wanted to be an Imagineer. That was my original goal in life. And then, they fired all the Imagineers as I was graduating from college. So that didn't really work. But that geeky side of me and that wanting to create animations and experiences and an imaginative world for children. Now these tools have become more and more available to me to be able to do that for kids. And that excites me. So I don't fear technology. I just find a way of using it to create a better experience for my clients and for the children I photograph. And that gets me excited.
And that's really important, Jeanine, because at Future Photography, we did a whole load of training and looks at AI, and Alan and Zena shared a whole lot of stuff, as did Brad and Jonathan. And the interesting thing that came out of that was, our great friend, Kira Derryberry, who's now president of PPA, she said to me in the car when I was leaving her back to the airport that everybody that she sees in the industry is talking about negatively about AI, right? And that this is going to ruin photography. And it's nearly the same reaction that we saw decades ago from the analog to digital switch, right?
Right.
And she said she really enjoyed Future Photography because it was a totally different mood and mindset. It was a mindset of, this is here. How can we use this to our advantage? How can we use it to speed up our marketing? How can we use it to make our marketing better? How can we use it in our workflows? How can we use it to deliver a better experience to our clients? That's interesting, isn't it? That Motorola didn't have that mindset.
No, they didn't. And it's what moved them backwards and ultimately, to not being a player in the marketplace anymore. And so, yeah, you have to learn lessons from that and other companies where that happened to in the industry, companies you never thought you'd see disappear.
And we talk all the time about the survival rate of businesses and small business in particular, and how many survive beyond, 1 year, 3 year, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and beyond. But it doesn't just stop at small business, right? I remember reading something, it was a couple of years ago now, but they had listed, I think it was 50 years back, the top 25 companies on the S&P, and the top companies in the S&P today, and there was one or two survivors.
Yeah.
So it's not just a problem for small businesses. It's not just a problem for photography businesses. It's a problem in general that it seems to be built into us, that we think we've made it, or we stop, or we, for whatever reason, but we constantly have to be alert and open. So I love that lesson, Jeanine. Thank you for sharing that with us all.
Yeah.
So talk to me about, because I've been involved in a partnership before, right? In a partnership where I merged two businesses, and it was a complete disaster. And I didn't check for, the reason why it was a disaster was I didn't check for culture, rights, and value systems. So it made sense from a business plan point of view. We'd gone through the whole business plan process. We didn't share any clients. We had different capabilities in the printing sector, in that it was a lithographic printing and digital rather than photographic. But like, we had, digital presses, and we were really good at pre-press, and we were sort of medium format printing, and they were B1 printing. They were, which is 40-inch presses. They had a really good bindery. They were really good at that. And we didn't share any clients whatsoever, no clients. So we're saying, like, we can cross-sell each other's capabilities when we merge, and our sales team can be trained to cross-sell and upsell and all that great stuff. And it was a complete disaster, and that business went bust in the end. But it was the big learning curve for me, because I remember reading Jack Welch's book shortly after that, and he talked about the mistakes they made in GE when they bought companies, was that a mistake they realized early was checking for culture, and they had to introduce a whole process of making sure the culture aligned in any business they took over. And if it didn't, they wouldn't go ahead. And if they had to change the culture, because it's nearly impossible to change a culture. It's not impossible, nothing's impossible, but it's very difficult. So talk to me about your partnership in photography. Like, was that, like, did you guys, because you were new to running your own business, even though there's that entrepreneurial sort of blood in your veins, but, did you guys go through a process of making sure you shared values and had a common vision and a common why and mission and purpose? Or was it just, no, this makes sense, we both love photography, let's just do it together?
To be honest, we were very young. So we just, we love it. We love this. We both love it. We're really good friends. Let's just go at this together. And we didn't do any of that. I mean, we shared a lot of common values. We knew that. We obviously had very similar styles because we were both mechanical engineers. And so a lot of the things that we did were very similar. However, we were probably too similar in that regard, right? We didn't have any complementary gifts. We had repetitive gifts. So what she was good at, I was good at, and what I was good at, she was good at. And so we had things that were probably missing in the business. But none of that is why our partnership ended up dissolving. It's because I needed to move back to Florida. And so we ended that partnership amicably, because it came to a point I had to move back to Florida. And so when I moved back is when I sold my half of the business to her and moved down here. So I don't know, honestly, if I would have stayed in Atlanta, if the partnership would have continued, maybe not. I don't know how that would have happened. It's hard to predict where that future would have gone.
So other than realizing that if you are to take on another partner or staff, that desire, that need to have complementary skills rather than the same skills, was there any other lessons you got from that?
From working together? No, I think that was the big one, and having, I don't know if I'd ever take on a studio partner again. It's really hard when multiple type A people work together like that. There has to almost be someone steering the ship and not two people steering the ship. And so, and I know it works for some. I know a lot of photography studios where you have two equal partners and they run things, but they still do different aspects of it. We have some good friends, Ronan, you and I, that run their studios together, but they each have different areas that they focus on. So I don't know. But me personally, I don't think I'd take on another business partner. Me right now, my challenge is growing the team and growing it and leading it. So, we've gotten to a certain point in the business where I've been able to do it with the 4 team members, including myself, that I have. But now I want to pretty much double. And I can't, what's that book? You can't, what got you here won't get you there. And so I've had the right systems. I've had the right leadership skills. I've had the right personnel in place to get me here. And now I've learned that my leadership is lacking in order to get me there. And there's I make a lot of assumptions of what needs to be done. And a lot of the things you've helped train me on repetition. And if multiple people can't do the system, then it's not a system. And having backups of what people can do, and getting buy-in from the team when you implement a new process. So many of these little things. Oh my goodness. Getting to $500,000 in sales is one thing. Getting past that, completely different. And so in order to get unstuck from this 500,000 mark to try and make it to $1 million, it's a completely different skill set. So while I can market the hell out of the studio and I can book the sessions and I can fully book and fully book and fully book, things break down with the team, then it doesn't matter. So now for me, I'm in my business journey, it's a matter of changing what I'm focusing my learning on. So now, as opposed to learning and trying to gobble up all sorts of new information on profit first and managing money and marketing and sales and things like that, now I'm gobbling up all sorts of information on team building and leadership and how to manage a team properly and how to incentivize a team and things like this. So all of my skill focuses have changed. And so it's interesting that part of the business journey, making that realization that I can't just market more and I can't just sell more to get to the next level. Although that would be fantastic because I'm really good at that. I would love it if I could just get to $1 million because I sold more and marketed more, but I have to manage the team and have the team in place to do it.
And it's really interesting, Jeanine, because, we talk in the Fully Booked Photographer, we developed our training programs, in fact, around helping photographers get to the lifestyle business phase. Then those who want to, and is a choice, we don't in any way say you have to do this. You define your own success. That's a core value within the Fully Booked Photographer. But the next step is that thriving business stage, which you've reached now, right? Which is that 500,000 plus business. And now you want to get to, because you have a vision to create a saleable business. Doesn't mean you'll ever sell it, but a saleable business is a turnover in 7 figures. And you're right, the challenges and the problems and the issues and the unlearning and relearning we have to do as the owner of the business changes on that journey. And, I've been on that journey while we've moved our total businesses from exactly through those steps. And now, we're approaching an 8-figure turnover. Even though we don't focus on that, we focus on the bottom line. But at each step of those, there's changes that we had to learn as a business. And one of the biggest challenges I had on that journey was delegation.
Yeah.
Do you find that hard for you to, it's not even trust, right? Even though it is, it's having a process that even when you delegate, you can't just leave it to the person. You're still the manager of the business. And I see this all the time in every business, not just photography businesses, though, that we think that we get delegation wrong in a number of ways. The first thing is we think about it as a person rather than a task, right? So we have to teach a delegation about as a task. Just because somebody can do A right and you can delegate it to them doesn't mean you can delegate task B just because they're the same person. So that's one critical thing of delegation. And then the second critical thing of delegation is once you delegate a task, it doesn't mean as a manager of the business you don't have responsibility to what I call run the quality control. Make sure that it continues to be done as it has been delegated. And I see it all the time where business, not just photographers, it just seems to be human nature in every business. That when we don't go through that delegation piece per task, not per person, And two, then when we do delegate something to a task to a person, they can do it, that we think that that's it, that that's our job done as the manager. What's been your experience of that journey? Like, how does, it's a new learning, isn't it? And it's a new way to look at things.
Yes, that has been my journey, Ronan, funny enough. So in the beginning, it was hard for me to delegate. I didn't want to delegate. The first thing I delegated was all of my retouching and the artistic design. That was easy. Once I got rid of that, I was like, woohoo, I never have to touch Photoshop again unless I'm just doing some little things in between. That was easy for me to delegate, honestly. It's all of the other little tasks in the studio. And so once I finally got to the point of delegating, my big thing was not checking back in. And because I just assumed that, we know what assumptions do, right? So I just would assume, hey, if I'm going to hand this off to person Y, they're going to do it like I did it. And they're going to do it like I told them how to do it. And all will be good. And I'll be able to do something else without having to worry about this. And that's not the case. And I learned that. And oh my gosh, it's like a lesson I keep learning over and over again. And I keep making the same mistake. And it's very frustrating. So I get into this because I get so busy. And I'll delegate a task and I think it's being done the way I want it to be done. And I come back to it and it's not. And I'm like, it's my fault. It's not their fault. Like you said, I haven't put the system in place to make sure that it's happening the way I want it to happen. And then we have to go back and sit through and go through the process and figure out how to better document the process, how to better implement the process, and how to better have daily or weekly check-ins on it to make sure that it's happening the way it needs to happen. So yes, this has been you would think I'm smart enough to get it right the first time, but I'm not. And I keep falling into it because I get busy. And I'm very busy. Not only do I have the studio and am I a mom, I'm also, with the fully booked photographer a lot. So depending on where my focus is on that particular day, I will unfocus on something else and then it slides. And so this has been a very big challenge for me on and I'm a great manager and juggler of lots of balls. But sometimes a ball falls to the floor and then they all come crashing down. And then it's a matter of getting them all back into the juggling workflow. And so that's been a challenge, I'll be honest with you. And I'm working through it now with the team at the studio. We've implemented a daily stand-up, which has really helped. That way we can check on everything that's happening and nothing gets behind. And for me, the ultimate failure is when something getting behind reaches the client. I can handle if it's happening within. It's when it reaches the client that's where I get ultra frustrated. And I'm like, oh, my failure hit my client. And again, it's not my team's failure, it's my failure. And I fully own that. And so our daily stand-ups has really helped and getting those in place. And then a weekly meeting that's a little bit longer, just kind of going through all the projects, especially when we're in our busier time of year. And it's funny, actually, our busiest time of year, we tend to have less mistakes than in our slower time of year, oddly enough. And so, but yeah, the keeping daily tabs, and I don't want to say like I ended up having to become a micromanager. I don't think that's really what it is. It's just more a manner of figuring out how to get the right systems, get the right checklists that my team will follow. Like, are they visual? And this is what I've had to learn. Are they more visual people? Are they paper people? Are they computer people? Like, what is going to be that they will do daily? Turns out most of my team, they're paper people. Whereas they like to have on the app that shows them things and they can get their tasks daily in the different apps that we're using, like in the engine and in our studio management software. But hold on one second. James? What? You saw them. Okay. Sorry. Podcast live with children on summer vacation. So what was I saying? Oh yeah. So they both, like, a lot of us like to write. And so actually me, Candace, and Sarah, we're all writers. And so I write in my Remarkable, they write on notepads. And when we're having our team meetings, we write. We're not typing into a system. And so learning your team's style of how they'll actually implement, I think, is really important too. And so during our daily meetings, we handwrite and we make task lists. Even though the task list is automatic on the computer, if it doesn't get written down and crossed off manually, none of us do it. So I learned that really quick. Like, electronic task managers don't work for my team. They just don't. They don't see them. They don't look at them. It doesn't grab their importance. What grabs their importance is a piece of paper in front of their desk or on their workstation, wherever, Sarah works in a production room, on her, like right there, these are the things I have to do today. So that, I think, listening and paying attention to your team. And so no matter what I learn, I still have to take it back to my studio and figure out how to implement it. And so a system that works for one studio or one business might not work for mine because that's not the team that I have. And so I've learned that lesson. And it's a matter of taking the knowledge that I gain and figuring out how to implement it with the team that I have to motivate them and get shit done.
So tell me this, like what was your learning as a manager and managing this process about when something does go wrong? You already mentioned that you accept responsibility, that it's you as the manager, right? Which is absolutely critical to do. But like, do you like ball out your team, or do you have a different approach to that?
Well, first I call you and I ball out to you. And I'm like, Ronan, what happened? And then you calm me down and talk me off the ledge. And then that's only happened a few times. But no, in all reality, I if something goes wrong, I do look at it from what did I screw up? Because I know it's going to be me. And I try not to, it's never really them. They might not follow the process right. Or it's the same thing. We're all human. Whereas I fall down on managing a process, they fall down on following a process because it's not daily reminded. So when something goes wrong, I joke about it, but I do usually message you. I'm like, what happened? And then you remind me, what did you do wrong? And then I remind myself, what did I do wrong? And then I'll meet with the team and keep everything positive and upbeat. And we figure out what we need to do, what went wrong. Why did it go wrong, and how can we improve it so that it doesn't happen again? And we all make mistakes, and I'm fine with making mistakes. It's just I don't like to make the same mistake more than once. And so how can we stop that mistake from happening again?
Yeah, the lens I was taught many, many, many years ago was that when something goes wrong, you don't blame the person, you blame the process or a training issue.
Yeah.
So it's either the process needs to be refined or somebody lacks some training on the process. And if you approach it that way, then the people you're interacting with, your team you're interacting with, it's not personal anymore, right?
And they
it's
don't get defensive. And nothing goes well in a relationship or in a team relationship, personal or business. Nothing goes well when people get defensive. So absolutely. Yeah, no, you taught me that, and it's and I have to remind myself of it, and it's starting to become habit, and it is very true, and it's very helpful. And if we can look at the process, then what I find is everybody problem solves then. So we had a process breakdown when I was in Ireland, and we all for future photography, when we got together, we all looked at the process, and instead of anybody getting defensive, everybody got into problem solving mode. So when you have an entire team solving a problem as opposed to everybody getting defensive, it's amazing what can happen.
And you've automatic buy-in.
Yes, you have automatic buy-in because they're helping to solve the problem.
Yeah. Excellent, Jeanine. I can't believe our time in this podcast is up. What an amazing podcast. I really enjoyed you telling your story. I thought we'd get through your whole story. We haven't, but I guess that's going to have to be a future podcast.
I know I'll have to do a part two. Look, come on, Ronan. The two of you and I talking.
I know.
We never get through anything in 30 minutes.
So guys, if you like this podcast, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. And of course, we're running our 30-day challenge. So in the link below, you can join Jeanine, Brad, Jonathan, and myself, and go about a 30-day challenge to fully implement a marketing system to generate leads on demand in your business. So all you have to do to go on the waiting list for that, or to actually get started with it, is click on the link below. So we'll see you all again. Hopefully we'll be all back as a team for the next podcast. Bye from me for now.
Bye, everyone.